Restart. Hello everyone. Again, my name is Teacher Ujambo Davis Alex from Namugongo Secondary and Vocational School. In our previous lesson, I introduced business mathematics and we basically looked at simple interest. We looked at how to calculate simple interest and how we can compute the amount after a certain period of time. Now, in today's lesson, we are going to look at what we call compound interest. So when we are computing interest, we can compute it in two ways. It can be compounded or it can be simple interest. So we need to understand what simple interest is. Then we shall also look at how we can solve problems involving simple interest. So if you borrow money from a bank, so when the interest is not paid directly to the lender, assuming you are not paying this money directly to the lender, but added to the amount borrowed, that you compute the interest, then that interest that you compute, you add it to the amount of money that you borrowed. Then the principal will increase with time. And when the principal is increased each year by addition of interest, the money is said to be lent at compounding interest. And the amount A of investment of principal P at a compound interest rate, still we shall remain with our principal P, we shall remain with our interest rate R, but this time we shall be calling it compound interest rate. In the previous lesson, we were calling it simple interest rate. I want you to take note of the difference between the two. Here we are calling it compound interest rate per annum after a given period of time, which can be any years after a given period of time. And we shall be using that given period of time, we shall be using letter N to represent that given period of time. Now see, compound interest, when we are computing, there is a formula that we use, and basically that is what you need to master. Now that formula, when you are using it, it gives us the amount. It gives us the amount of money that someone will have after a certain period of time. And this formula is A, which stands for amount, is equal to principal P into 1 plus R over 100. Then you put this in bracket, the whole of it raised to the power of N. I repeat, our formula amount is equal to P into 1 plus R over 100 raised to the power of N. So 1 plus R over 100 is put in the bracket. Then the whole of this must be raised to the power of N. When you are writing this N, you must write it as a power. Don't multiply this bracket by N, no. N is written as a power. So P stands for principal. R stands for the compound interest rate. Then N stands for the time taken. Then A stands for the amount. Now, this, when you are using this formula, it does not give us the interest directly. It gives us the amount of money that one will have to pay back after a certain period of time. Now to get our interest I, our interest I is going to be equal to amount minus the principal. So to get the interest is going to be equal to amount minus the principal. So meaning that to get the amount, it's going to be equal to principal plus interest, as we discussed in our previous lesson. So now we are going to look at a few examples and see how we can apply this formula in our calculations. So our first question is, Kapere invested 15 million shillings. Kapere invested 15 million shillings at 12% compound interest. So what happens here, when they are setting the question, they always specify. If it is simple interest, in the question you will see the word simple interest. If it's compound interest, in the question you see the word compound interest. That's what differentiates. When they are setting, they always specify whether it is simple interest or compound interest. Then they are saying, find the amount of investment after 2 years. So what you are going to do here is to just quote the formula. You say amount is equal to P into 1 plus R over 100. Then the whole of this raised to the power of N. That's what we are going to have. And now we are going to substitute. Our P, our principal, is 15 million shillings into 1 plus R, which is 12%. That's going to be 12 over 100. Then the whole of this is raised to the power of 2. Our N is 2. Then from here, when you are computing, you have to be very careful. Don't multiply the 15 million shillings by what is in the bracket. No. We shall first simplify what is in the bracket. And when you simplify what's in the bracket, that's going to be 15 million shillings into, so when you simplify this, 12 over 100 can be written as 0.12. Then you add it to this one, which becomes 1.12. Put it in a bracket, then raise the power of 2. Then from here, what is in the bracket is what's going to be squared. So we are going to multiply 1.12 by itself. So you only square what's in the bracket. Then you multiply by 15 million shillings. Or if you want, we can expand this and have it as 15 million shillings multiplied by 1.12 times 1.12. And when you compute, when you get your calculator and you compute, your calculator is going to give you the answer as 18 million shillings, 816,000. If you use your calculator and you compute carefully, this is what you are going to get. So meaning that after 2 years, the amount of investment is going to be 18,816,000 shillings. This is the amount. So this amount here is inclusive of two things, principal and interest. Now, if they want you to compute the interest, then you are going to subtract this. You are going to subtract the principal from the amount. You're going to subtract the principal from the amount. And that is what we are going to look at in our next example, our second example. But if you want to calculate your interest here, you say now interest is going to be equal to amount minus principal. So you get this amount of 18,816,000 shillings minus the principal of 15 million shillings. So what you will get will be your interest of the investment. So we are going to look at our second question and see how we can handle it. Hope you are following. So our second example says, find the compound interest and the amount on a principal of 88,173,000 shillings deposited for 3 years at 5% per annum. So in that question, you need to identify the principal, identify the time, and identify the interest, the compound interest rate. So our principal is the 88,173,000. Then the time is 3 years. Then our compound interest rate is 15%. So what you do is to quote the formula. And you just say amount is equal to P into 1 plus R over 100. So I'm saying, you say our amount is equal to P into 1 plus R over 100 raised to the power of N. Raised to the power of N. Then we shall substitute our values into our formula. So we are saying our amount is equal to P into 1 plus R over 100, then raise the power of N. So we are going to substitute our values into that formula. So we have our principal as 88,173,000 into 1 plus R. And our R is 5%, that is 5 over 100. Raise the power of N, and in the question our N is 3. Then you can compute what is in the bracket. And when we compute what's in the bracket, it can be 88, let us 88,173,000 multiplied by, so 5 over 100, the same as saying 0.05. Then you add it to 1 and it becomes 1.05. Then the whole of this raised to the power of 3. Then here remember, we shall only cube what's in the bracket. So it is the 1.05 which is going to be multiplied by instead of 3 times. Then you multiply it by our principal of 88,173,000 shillings. And when you use your calculator and you compute, you'll be able to get your answer as 102,071,269.13. So this is going to be 102,071,269.3. This is going to be the amount of investment. Or this is the amount that someone is going to earn after 3 years. Remember, he deposited 88 million. But after 3 years, this is the amount he's having. So which means this amount, his 88 millions that he invested has earned him or her an interest. And now how do we get that interest? According to the question, they want us to, because they are saying find the compound interest. So we are going to compute the compound interest. And now when we are computing compound interest, it's going to be this amount minus the principal. Okay, which is going to be, you get the amount minus the principal. So our amount is here, 102,071,269.3. 0.13. So we are going now to compute our interest. And we say now our interest I is equal to our interest I is equal to amount minus the principal. So our amount is 102,071,269.13 minus the principal, and the principal is 88,173,000. So when you subtract, we shall have our interest as 13,893,269.13. So this is going to be the interest. You see, someone who deposited 88,173,000 shillings is in a position to get an interest of 13 million. So meaning that if you can now compare the two. You can compare the simple interest and the compound interest and see which one is better. Would you opt for simple interest or for compound interest? According to me, I would opt for compound interest because it earns more money. Because the question wanted us to find the compound interest, which is this, and amount on principal. So the amount is that value that we got first, the 102,071,269.13. That is the amount. Then the 13,893,269.13 is that is the interest. That's the interest. So now we are going to have our third example. We're going to look at our third example where we have Mr. Oluka invested 200,000 shillings in a building society at 10%. Which sum is greater by the end of 6 years and by how much? They are saying which sum is greater by the end of 6 years. So there, they want us to find the amount that Mr. Oluka will have after investing this money in a building society for 6 years. And then they are saying by how much? By how much? Definitely it is the interest. We shall get that amount minus what he invested. So we subtract the principal from the amount. Because they say Mr. Oluka invested 200,000 shillings in a building society at 10%. Which sum is greater by the end of 6 years and by how much? So what we are going to do here, we shall compare the two, because I say which sum is greater by the end of 6 years. So they have not specified whether it is simple interest or compound interest. So you will compute compound interest, get that amount. Then also compute simple interest, get that amount. Then you get the difference, because they are saying which amount is greater. It's like we are looking at two things. We are comparing compound interest and simple interest. So you can start with compound interest and you say amount is equal to P into 1 plus R over 100, then the whole of this raised to the power of N. So our amount is 200,000 shillings. 1 plus R. Our R is 10%, that's 10 over 100. Then raised to the power of 6. So if you use your calculator, you are going to compute and you'll be able to get that answer. This time, I'm not going to get for you the answer. I want you to compute and you get that value. So you are going to compute. But now remember here, what is in the bracket here, it's going to be 1 plus 0.1. And that becomes 1.1 raised to the power of 6. Let me write it here. I say 200,000 into, when you simplify what's in the bracket here, it will be 1.1. Then the whole of this raised to the power of 6. Then from here you can use your calculator and you'll be able to compute that answer. That is going to be amount using compound interest. Because they say which sum is greater by the end of, we are comparing two sums, simple interest and compound interest. Then after that, we shall also compute now our simple interest. Simple interest. And simple interest is going to be equal to P times T times R over 100. And our P is 200,000. Say 200,000 times T, which is 6 years, times R, which is 10. And that 10, it is per annum over 100. So you are going to compute. And when you compute, you'll be able to get the answer here. So when you get this answer, that's the interest, then you get the amount. So we say our amount so you are going now to compute, you have the interest, now you get amount. And you say amount is equal to principal plus interest. So remember, the amount is 200,000 shillings plus the interest that you would have got here. Of course, I have not computed it. I want you to compute it. That's why I'm putting a dash there. So that's going to be the, you get there 200, the principal 200,000 plus the interest that you would have got from here. Then you'll be able to get that amount. Then they are saying, and by how much? So by how much you are going to compare the two. And obviously, if you are to compare the two, the amount got using compound interest. So by how much is the difference? Is the difference between the two? Because they are saying by how much is the difference. So it's going to be the amount by compound. Amount by compound interest. Let me write it like this, just amount by compound interest minus amount by simple interest. Amount by simple interest. Amount by compound interest minus amount by simple interest. Then you will be able to get, so you get your amount here by compound interest. You will compute it minus the amount by simple interest. So that difference, it will be, that I'm now answering that part because they are saying which sum is greater by the end of 6 years and by how much. So by how much is what I'm answering here, is that difference. And obviously, when you look at which sum is greater, the amount computed using compound interest will be greater than the amount computed using simple interest. I want you to try that one out and you'll be able to see it. So this now brings us the end of our lesson. Hope you will follow our segments on our YouTube channel. I want to wish you a nice time.